Well, this topic has been in the news a lot lately, especially in a recent NFL player's case. And there's also been a lot of research done in regards to the effects of spanking and physical discipline on a child. Here with more on these studies and with ideas on how perhaps to discipline your children with mindfulness is author Beth Generis. Good morning, Beth. Thanks for dropping in.
Yes, absolutely.
Always a pleasure to see you. So, very important topic, very relatable to so many of us parents. So first off, let's talk about some of these studies. One particular study, to be exact, that you have honed in on.
Yes. So there was a study that came out in February 2012 in the Canadian Medical Association Journal. Okay. And it was done by two docs, Dr. Durant and Ensom. And what they found, it's a 20-year study, so it's not just
a long time.
And a huge population of kids. What they found was that indeed there was some big problems with using physical discipline to help your child learn things. In fact, they showed, actually, after looking through all the studies that they could come across, as well as what they observed in these children, there was no link between positive behavior and physical discipline.
Wow.
Which is really hard to believe, because in the American culture, I would say between 75% and 80% of the families in America use physical discipline, especially with
physical discipline.
especially with, say, younger children, toddlers.
Yeah, and you know, you point out something, because spanking is not the only form of physical discipline that we've been seeing. And you see this, does this apply to NFL players Adrian Peterson's case?
Yes, absolutely. So a few things. One thing that he did say was, in fact, he was disciplined this way.
That's how he was brought up.
And, and he felt that it taught him a lot of responsibility, and so he was just doing the same thing, thinking he was being a good parent. And in fact, that's one of the things we've noticed, is that parents who were disciplined in this fashion feel they have this belief that they were helped. But when you really investigate it, what happens is that they did something with it in their minds. What was the parent trying to do? But in reality, the physical discipline doesn't teach you that. It actually teaches a child to be afraid of the parent.
Afraid, and it's a little jaw-dropping that this study specifically shows that it could actually slow down a child's ability to learn.
Right. So they're not sure if it's because of the aggression or the anxiety, the cortisol. You know, when you're very stressed, cortisol releases. Well, that affects your brain. It affects your capacity to learn, and so it slows down their cognitive development, and it increases their aggressivity. The opposite of what you're going for. You're going to be trying to help, because one of the arguments is that people who discipline their children with physical discipline, they do it because the child is so out of control and they're aggressive.
They've tried other things, and perhaps they feel
and what they discovered,
frustrated.
Yes, and what they've discovered is that using that form of discipline increases aggressivity, increases antisocial behavior. It decreases their capacity to gain control of themselves internally. So there are some other ways that are better.
So let's talk about these perhaps newer approaches.
Okay.
And what we're seeing.
So what I mentioned before was something that they said in the study, that they discovered indeed that when you work with families, it's what they do with the information, those parents, when they say, well, I was disciplined this way. Well, that's mindfulness. They're thinking it through. They're saying, well, my father was trying to help me, or my mother was trying to help me. I was really not acting properly. They do this cognitive restructuring in their brain, those that do well and don't increase their aggressivity. So one of the things that we want to do is to help children learn, right? That's why we're using discipline.
Of course.
So if you think of discipline not as punishment, if you change your view of the word as guidance, then you can start to think about how you can help children. And I came up with this really nice idea to use the word guide. G-U-I-D-E.
Guide.
Guide.
Okay.
Right? So G, get at their level. Find out what's really going on. What's the defiance about? Have you not given them enough time to move to what they need to do next? Are you ignoring them? Has it been too long since they've eaten? Whatever it is. So get on their level.
Get on their level.
You understand. Try to understand what might be going on for them. Children only have a few ways to communicate with their parents. Defiance is a communication. Resistance is a style of communication. The child is saying, this isn't working for me. They don't have language A 2-year-old can't say, Mom, I don't want to do it.
2-year-old, 5-year-old for that matter.
Stomp
sometimes.
their foot and say no. They use defiance, right?
Sure.
And so if you're trying to understand, then that helps. Then the next way to do that is to use that I, right? Intervene, identify what the problem is, maybe invert it. Remember we talked once before when we were together about looking from the other perspective. And then D, discipline. Come up with some sort of response. You have to respond to your children's bad behavior. But come up with a response that's going to actually begin to develop their skills cognitively. So they lose a toy, logical consequences, natural consequences, and E, energy release. Most children that require spankings from their parents' point of view are out of control. There's too much energy. Maybe they've had too much sugar, whatever it is. Figure out a way to help them release that energy as opposed to
Before you intend
so
on
use
spanking
guide
and
as your
using
way
some
to
form
think of discipline.
All of this covered in your book. This, by the way, a great book. I've read part of it, Turning No to On.
Right?
Fantastic.
Thank you. Yes, it is covered. Talks about how we need to move children from no to yes and off to on. And indeed, this study specifically that we mentioned earlier shows that hitting a child doesn't move them on that path. So mindfulness is the way to go.
Thank you for your insight, Beth. It's always a pleasure. Again, for more on this topic, for more on Beth and her books, go to our website, krqe.com. We've got a link for you there.